Tony Craig, I play Jack Huey on Due South.
I am Catherine Brouillet.
Hey everyone, this is Ramona Milano, otherwise known as Francesca Vecchio.
This is Paul Haggis.
This is Paul Gross, and you're listening to Due South by Southeast. Thank you kindly.
I wish this podcast would carry me away. But while talking to Squee, can Michelle get a word in edgeways? Record over a bottle of rum on a dock of Southampton Bay. Due South, that is what we're talking about. Due South. Saddle up my microphone, get deep in bed, curl a bone. Due South by Southeast.
Hello and welcome to this special Squeef3st. You see, I've even lost my words like 13 hours into this event, but the special edition for Squeef3st of Due South by Southeast, the show which usually gives Due South its due one episode at a time. Tonight we're doing something a bit more special. Thank you very much to Matt Lees, who does our theme tune there. We're welcoming the man who put the music behind Due South. We've always said that in Due South, the music is an extra character. It gives an extra dimension, which just wouldn't be there otherwise. Please welcome the ever wonderful Jay Semko. How are you doing, Jay?
Good. Nice to be here. How are you doing? Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. Thank you very much.
All right. Great.
Which
Hey,
is
you know what?
really...
I don't think I'd ever actually heard that version of the theme song. It was pretty cool.
As I say, it's our friend Matt Lees very kindly has actually done the theme tune to every show I've ever done, and he was goodly enough to do a version of your wonderful Due South theme tune.
Oh, it's cool. It's cool.
Oh, thank you. I will pass that on. All praise to Matt. Now, sir, I'm very glad that you are coming through clear, because we didn't have such luck with David Marciano earlier. He was very lovely with his time. Unfortunately, technology got the best of us. So anyone from the Due South community is watching, we will bring you an interview with David to make that up another time. He's very kindly agreed to do that. But Jay, first of all, like I've been asking everyone, how in your corner of the world is everyone doing in these weird and wonderful times we're in?
Well, we're doing all right. I'm in the province of Saskatchewan in Canada, which is sort of, I guess, not quite in the geographic center of the country, but close. I think Winnipeg is Manitoba, one province over would be that. So I'm in the city of Saskatoon in Saskatchewan, and unfortunately, we're undergoing a bit of a surge of cases with COVID right now, and one of the things is we have a high number of people that aren't vaccinated yet, although that is improving and more people are becoming vaccinated, which will hopefully bring the numbers down. And but we're doing okay. I mean, in this particular province, everything is pretty much wide open. Like as of mid-July, any restrictions, etc., were removed in Saskatchewan. So there's and businesses, I guess, have the choice of whether they want people to wear a mask in there and that kind of thing. But it's there has been some live music, and there's been some light at the end of the tunnel this summer, because of actually my band, the Northern Pikes. Well, I'm one of the members of the band. I can't say it's my band, but I'm one of the four guys in the band. We've actually been out playing a few live shows, which we hadn't. The last time we had played pre-COVID was we played a couple of nights in Toronto in November of 2019. And we hadn't played. And, so we ended up playing the Saskatoon, or in the province of Saskatchewan, it's called the Saskatchewan Jazz Festival, although it's really a wide variety of music. And so we were kind of the I guess, the headliners. We finished off the whole festival this year, which was really fun. We had never played that particular festival, and people were it was very joyous. People were very excited to have live music happening again, and it was like a week-long festival. And then we went to the city of Winnipeg and we played a couple of shows there, or one show with, I guess, 3 other bands. And that was really fun to see some of the other people from the other musicians, or the other musicians from the other bands. One was a band 5440, they're a great Canadian band, and also the Jim Cuddy band. Jim Cuddy is a member of the band Blue Rodeo. And Blue Rodeo actually had a song on one of the episodes of Due South. I think the song was Flying. But anyway, Jim is one of the members of Blue Rodeo, and his band includes other members of that group. And there was a band from Winnipeg called the Trebles, who I just met for the first time, and the Northern Pikes played on that bill, and it was really fun. In fact, the theater, interestingly enough, is it was called the Walker Theater. It's a haunted, beautiful theater in downtown Winnipeg. But a number of years ago, they changed the name to the Burton Cummings Theater. Burton Cummings being singer-songwriter from the band The Guess Who were really one of the most popular Canadian bands. And you know what? One of the first records I ever bought was by The Guess Who. And so anyway, it's called the Burton Cummings Theater. And then most recently, see, what we were doing also is we started working on an album in the autumn of 2019, which got, I guess, postponed because of COVID. We didn't finish. We made a good dent in it, in the stuff that we were working on. But so we were booked to play a show on September 10th in St. John's, Newfoundland, which is in the extreme far east of Canada. That's the closest we get to the UK is St. John's. Literally, it's right on the eastern tip of Canada. But Hurricane Larry, a hurricane, came zooming up, and so we flew in, and literally the next day flew out of there before the hurricane hit, and they canceled our show. It was, once again, a festival, a week-long festival called the Iceberg Festival, which is quite apropos because they get a lot of icebergs in Newfoundland. It's really an amazing place. I mean, it's a pretty neat place to get to. But unfortunately, we didn't get to play. So then we flew down to Halifax, beating the hurricane before it showed up in Newfoundland, and then went into the recording studio to continue working on the album that we had sort of halted work on 2 years previously. So we're getting close on that. It'll be a cool album. It's kind of a tribute to our Snow in June record. Is the 30th anniversary of the release of that album, and so it includes, I guess, it's kind of a stripped down, kind of acoustic oriented, more of a folky side of the Northern Pikes. It includes some new songs and some reworkings of the Snow in June songs. So anyway, it was fun. It was really fun to hang out with the guys and work in the studio, and been fun to play the shows. We're all best friends. We've known each other. We're like brothers. We've known each other since we were literally teenagers. So, I guess with Kevin Kane is our newest member, who I really have just gotten to know over the past few years when he's been playing in the group. But Kevin also plays in a group called the Grapes of Wrath, a very popular Canadian group. And so Kevin joined the group a few years ago. And so, yeah, it was just really fun to be back and doing that, even though I have been busy, in Saskatoon, doing a number of different projects over the last, I guess, 20 months, essentially, So how are things there? How are things where you are?
Yeah, I mean, we're in a very, I think, good position with the vaccine rollout. We got in fairly early with that, and so although the cases are rising here for COVID, unfortunately, especially as we go into winter, that was kind of expected. The number of hospitalizations and people getting seriously ill are way down. So that's a really good effect. It just means that it's hitting our industries and people who can't work, and the amount of like delivery drivers, for instance, and things like that, which are down. But generally speaking, it's quite a good picture. I mean, to me and some others, you could question how quickly we opened everything up. So everything's open now, and there's no mandate to wear masks anywhere. For me, I think maybe just even on public transport and supermarkets, it might have been nice to have a mask mandate. For me, if you go to the pub or something like that, you're kind of accepting a level of risk. But maybe areas where everyone has to go, I think it would have been nice. But that's another story. So we're getting on okay. Like everything's opened up. I just worry what the kind of end result of everything opening up is, and I hope everyone's okay.
Yeah, well, I guess that's similar here. You know, it's interesting because different provinces have different rules regarding that. And when we went to both Newfoundland and Nova Scotia had much stricter protocols than they do in the province where I live in Saskatchewan, and their numbers are quite a bit lower in terms of people ill in fatalities and stuff like that. So interesting to see. You know, Canada's a great big, huge, spread out country with these provinces and territories, and then the fun thing about actually playing in the band in the Northern Pikes is that we've been able to travel literally over every province, every territory, up to the Arctic and everywhere, and being able to play music over the years. So it's been kind of fun. But we've never been to the UK, and I would love to go. And our first two records were released there. We were signed to Virgin Records originally in 1987, and we did a number of records on Virgin. And the first two albums were released in every territory where Virgin released albums, actually. So, and you know, we had a tour that kind of fell through at the last minute. Actually, we were going to be out touring. I remember with a band called, do you remember the band Chapow?
Oh yeah, China in Your Hands.
Yes.
Yeah,
Chapow. We were booked to do a tour with them, and then something happened literally a week before we were supposed to do that. It didn't happen. So I don't know. I still would love to go over there. I have many friends now who live there, you know, through the wonder of the internet and through the work that I've done on Due South and other TV shows and other music projects I've been working on. So I would love to go over there. I really would love to go. That's on my list in the next couple of years, I think, is to get over there. I think it's going to be cool. My niece is now living there with her husband and kids. And he's from there. They live in Cheltenham, and I don't know exactly where that is, but
Cheltenham, it's up London Way.
Up London Way. And where are you right now?
Southampton, so basically an hour out of London.
An hour of London. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And I see you've got some amazing pictures there. I love the Spock picture.
Yeah,
That is cool.
Spock. We've got actually you've got to point in the opposite direction because the camera flips it. But from Due South, we've got the cover with signed by the guys.
Cool.
Bit of Doctor Who, some of the podcasts which I'm part of. A little bit of decoration in the background.
Oh, cool. You know what I saw once online?
Yep.
Somebody had taken the theme song from Due South and put it to some Doctor Who clips. And I haven't seen it since. I saw it once, and maybe it's still up. I don't know. I guess if somebody wants to search for that, but it was very interesting. It did an interesting thing. Whoever did that had a really creative knack for fitting music with picture. You know, pretty cool.
Amazing. Just very quickly, we just got a message from our mutual friend John Wright, who was very kind in helping set this up today. So, hey Jay, we'll dip in and out watching as I'm doing some chores and groceries down here in Australia. So big hi from John there. And
well, hey John, good to see you, brother. I met John during there've been a number of Due South conventions in Toronto.
RCW 139 events.
Yeah, that's the here. I'll show you here. Where is it?
I love it.
It's my license plate that they gave me. So pretty cool, pretty cool. And that, you know, the Due South fans will know that was the license number on Ray Vecchio's Riviera.
Yeah. So Sal, look, I've got some questions from the fans as well as from myself to put to you. I'm actually going to start off. There is a special young mini Mountie. We've got Micah, who's submitted a question for you. So we've got a little video clip for this one.
Okay.
Hi Jay, I'm Micah, and I'm 7. My favourite music is cabin music and Times Changed. How do you feel like listening to Due South now?
So her favorite music is cabin music and Times Change. And how do you feel when you listen to the Due South music now?
You know, it's very interesting because Due South has just over the last, I guess, the last year or so, come back into syndication in Canada, and it plays on a couple of TV stations. And I mean, it's on about
Encore?
every few hours, literally, actually. So I've been kind of catching and watching some of the episodes. And I mean, you know, it's been a number of years, and it's really fun for me to go back, see the episodes, hear the music, and go, "Oh yeah." And sometimes, you know, there's the odd one I'll go by and I go, "Wow, I barely remember doing that," you know. But it's when we worked on the episodes, sometimes there were very strict time constraints, so you didn't have much time to really to overthink things, and sometimes that's good because it just you go on instinct and you get it done, especially once we were in the groove and we knew what our main themes were in the show. But that's very cool that you like times change. and and I'm sorry, what was the young lady's name again?
And Micah.
Micah. Times change. That's on my first solo album. The album is entitled Mouse and Cabin Music. Well, speaking of cabin music, well, I just happen to have this guy here. Cabin music. That was, you know, it's interesting. A lot of people really do love the cabin music, music cue piece of music. What they're called on every piece of music that's a piece of score in a TV show or a film is referred to as a cue, as a music cue.
Mm.
So that cue, and that was really the first piece of music that I wrote for Due South. What happened was I was contacted by the Northern Pikes agent, and the band was actually breaking up. This is in mid 1993, and they contacted me and said there's this new TV show that they're working on, and they're shooting up in the Yukon right now, and the producer is a big fan of your songwriting and would like to know whether you'd like to try and submit a demo for a potential theme song for the show if it actually goes to a series. And they were shooting the pilot there. So, and that was a very interesting experience because I've never had a song come to me so quickly. And as we were speaking on the phone, she was describing the plot of the pilot movie, Janet, the agent, and I just started getting a lot of ideas. And I was like, whoa, I could hear the melody in my head, and I started scribbling down lyrical ideas. And it was just one of those things where I could hardly wait to get off the phone because I had this song in my brain and I didn't want to lose it. I didn't want to forget about it. So I wanted to kind of do just a quickie recording on it. Back then I used a cassette player to record things on, and it happened very quickly. And then they liked what I submitted there. So a number of weeks later, they said, well, would you like to try and submit something for the music score? And I said, well, I have no idea what I'm doing. I had no experience in that at all. I knew nothing about film scoring or anything, but if you send me something, I'll see if I can find some music for that seems appropriate. And there was a scene, so they sent some roughs on a VHS tape, and rough versions of scenes that were, they hadn't done a final edit of the show or anything like that. And there were a few scenes, and one of them was Benton Fraser in the Mountie investigating and looking for clues after his father had been assassinated, and he's up looking and sort of looking on the tree branches and for signs of evidence and stuff like that. And that's where I put cabin music to that. It was just like. Although it was probably a little longer than that, but that was hopefully the hopefully that sounded okay over the airways there.
Amazing, sir. Just
Oh.
thank you. What an honor.
But,
One more
but that
time.
was cabin music, and that was the first kind of score piece that I kind of, I guess, demoed. And then I guess what happened from there is I wrote 3 pieces of music, and the other one was another piece of music which never really saw the light of day because it was probably not appropriate for it. It was more like surf music during the snowmobile chase happening. And then there was and the third piece, I don't remember. I don't remember what the third one was right now. But anyway, I did a quick recording of this stuff, and I played all the instruments, and I just sent it in, and lo and behold, a few weeks later, they got back to me and said, "We really like what you're doing, and would you be interested in coming to Toronto and potentially starting work on the pilot movie, and we'll be hooking you up with some other more established film composers," because they were aware that I was a complete rookie at doing that. So it was literally the next day. I can't. It was bizarre. They had just said, "Well, look, they're spotting the episode." Essentially means you sit and look at the version of the show that you're going to be working with, and with the producers and often the director and other people who are involved in the production, and you're looking at it all, and you talk about the music, and you talk about places where the producer envisions music going in for various scenes, where it would go in and where it would stop, like where it would begin and stop within the context of the show and the various scenes. And so literally I was on a plane later that day, and I went to Toronto, and the next morning there was a spotting session with Paul Haggis, and I think Jeff King was there, and that was the first time I met John McCarthy and Jack Lenz, who became we became the team, the composing team for Due South, and we got to know each other. It was really quite a cool thing for me because I didn't know at all really what I was doing about any of the technical aspects of it, but I did have I believe I had a good instinct for what would work in certain scenes. And I think that was sort of, plus I come from a songwriting background, and I think that was really lent itself well. And I really envisioned, my vision was organic type instruments like acoustic guitars and harmonica and that kind of thing, and using the piano. And yeah, so we all met. We spent a few hours looking at the first cut of Due South, and then John and I went back to his place. I think we noodled around for a while on a couple of musical ideas, and then literally the next day, the 3 of us got together at a different studio and started working on stuff. And we all became, you get very close. It was almost like having another band. The timing of it was really good for me because, the band, the Northern Pikes, had just broken up, and I was really feeling somewhat at a bit of a loss as to what am I going to do now? Where am I going to go? And what's happening? And lo and behold, we kind of became this trio. We became our own band to a certain extent, working on the show. And those guys are so talented. I mean, when you look at it, John McCarthy has won numerous awards, and one of the awards he won it was called the Genies at that time. Now they're all called the Canadian Screen Awards in various categories, but he won the Canadian equivalent of the Academy Award for motion picture for doing the score for a movie that was adapted from a Margaret Atwood novel. I think it's called The Stone Angel. And Jack Lenz has won so many awards through SOCAN, which is the Performing Rights Organization of Canada, for his massive amount of work that he's done on television shows over the years. And so these guys are really, really talented people. I mean, and their pedigree as well. It's interesting. Well, you would know probably, I'm sure people in the UK are aware of Mott the Hoople and Ian Hunter from Mott the Hoople. John McCarthy did a tour playing saxophone with Ian Hunter as part of the Ian Hunter band. Jack Lenz played for a number of years with Seals and Crofts and Loggins in Messina. So, you know, they had worked in those kind of situations, team situations before as band members, and yeah, we just sort of sat down there and started working on. But the question was, what was my favorite piece of music? Well, I think cabin music stands up pretty well from the TV show, and we've used that in various scenes where there's a bit of a retrospective or a bit of perhaps melancholy happening in regards to the Mountie, to Benton Fraser. And you know, the character was so brilliant for him because he really was a fish out of water, but he always was so resilient and maintained that positive attitude. And really, the episodes where he lost some of that became very, very memorable and really impacted a lot of people. Like, for instance, Victoria's Secret. A lot of people really loved the music in that particular episode, and a lot of that was solo piano, and that was Jack playing the piano. And we were very limited for time on that episode, I recall. We had to do, it was basically, did it as a 2-hour movie. You know, they, in some places they ran it as 2 1-hour episodes, and other places they ran it as a full 2-hour television movie. And I remember Paul Haggis he spent a lot of time in the studio with us when we worked on that. He knew that that was a really different and in some ways very important episode, because it really showed a whole different twist going on with the main character. And so Paul was pretty hands-on in that particular episode. And I mean, we really didn't sleep for about a week. I mean, you know, there were episodes with tight timelines where I think the tightest timeline we ever had was 24 hours. We had it literally because something had occurred, and the final cut kept getting delayed and delayed, and finally it was there, but we had to have it done because it was scheduled to air like 3 days later. And this is pre-internet, at least to the extent that we have it now. And I remember Pam was the lady who would literally hand deliver the final episodes to CBS studios in New York City. So she would cruise down, take a plane down there. And I mean, literally, and I don't remember which day it was or which episode it was. It was such a short turnaround, but literally she got there at 5 o'clock in the afternoon and the show was airing at 7, I think. So it was that close getting it happening there, you know?
Oh, sir, and there was actually a bit of music I wanted to ask you about. You mentioned some of the kind of amazing heavy hitters there. For me, the Inuit Soliloquy, I don't know if that's the name of the bit of music, but that was certainly the name of the track on the soundtrack album. And it was just the most wonderful speech by Paul Gross talking about the plight of the Inuit and this mother giving birth and then just moving on and keeping on walking. And the bit of music which leads into that. Can you tell us a bit about that one?
Well, one of the themes that we consistently used in there was when there was a reference to the Arctic and to the North and the wilderness and that kind of thing, and especially to the Inuit people, we would, and Diefenbaker as well, because he's that wild element, that wild, northern element, the dog. And I mean, and he's a wolf. In real life, he was a half wolf, but in the show, he was considered a wolf. And so there was, we used the drum, like a traditional drum, and there's that doom, doom, the pulse going through there, and there's some airy, I believe there's a little bit of airy kind of synth going on, and there's a little bit of acoustic guitar, and there's flute with a lot of delay, like echo and reverb on it. And that's John McCarthy. He's a flute player. He played classical flute, played with the Etobicoke Philharmonic Orchestra as a flute player. So we were really fortunate. I really feel like we, as a composing team, and there were the three of us. There was John and Jack and I for the first 40 episodes of the show. And then there was a break of a year. And then when they came back to do another 26, John had moved to Los Angeles. He had gotten his green card and moved down there, and he's lived there till now. And I had come back to Saskatchewan from Toronto because the show, all the work that we did was always in Toronto. And so I moved back to Toronto to continue working on the show. But that was, yeah, that was, I really love that music. I really love that vibe. And there was just sort of a wild and somewhat, otherworldly quality to those music cues. And especially in regards to, there's another cue that we used, I can recall that was very similar to that, although more energetic. And it's where Fraser may have to shoot Diefenbaker, and he's running, and he's got the gun, and the music is going, and it really builds nicely through that whole section. And it turns out it doesn't happen. So everything turns out okay. So something some fans of Due South, well, maybe they know about this, or maybe they don't, but along the way, what ended up happening was the dog Diefenbaker, and I wish I could remember his name now. I know that the Due South fans will know the dog's name, but
Lincoln?
Perhaps. Anyway, because when you're shooting a TV show, and I've shot tons of music videos, and I've actually been an extra on an episode of Due South on Mountie Sings the Blues. That's the name of the episode with Ronnie Hawkins. I got to hang out with rock and roll legend Ronnie Hawkins for a couple of days, and my part was yes, it was Lincoln. Yes, and I just realized now. Here we go. Yes, yes, it was Lincoln, and the. Anyway, what would happen is the dogs would get anxious. There was Lincoln and his brother was sort of he would sub in for him sometimes between the two dogs. Sometimes the dogs would get anxious. It's a long time on a TV set to be kind of staying still, and they'd have to have a scene where the dog has to stay still, and they would get kind of squirrely and interrupt the shooting sometimes. So they built a robotic version of Diefenbaker. So we called it Robo Dief.
Nice.
Robo Dief, that became one of the interesting things that we did when we were working on the episodes, is trying to figure out in a scene, okay, is that real Dief or is that Robo Dief? And they did such a great job, and I think it was a very expensive thing to do this. And he didn't move; he would basically lay there and kind of look around and stuff like that. But he looked very realistic, the Robo Dief. So, but the original question, pieces of music, geez, I don't know. I've written a lot of music over the years. There's some songs that seem to have their time, and then they kind of, like, I find, oh, maybe I'm kind of tired of that one now, and then it'll get rejuvenated in my brain a few years later. But in terms of Due South, I think the theme song stands up very well over time, both the instrumental and the vocal version. The theme song is actually credited as a co-write to Brian Potvin from the Pikes, and rightly so, because what happened was when I had the call to do the theme song, I went into Don Schmidt, the drummer from the Northern Pikes, had his own recording studio in Saskatoon, and by fluke, Brian was visiting. I think he was visiting his mother and his sister. And anyway, we got together. That was kind of like the last kind of recording that we did together until we reformed back in 1999. And I had this song, and then Brian, I had the idea for the descending guitar line. And what happened was Brian was tight for time. He couldn't stay for long. So he did 2 takes, and they were different than what I originally had wanted, which at the time was distressing to me, because I went, well, this isn't exactly what I was thinking here, but it worked. And it worked pretty well, and it became a signature part of the song. And so Brian he's the co-writer of that song, and that was the right thing to do there. And I'm very glad we did that. So yeah. So what you hear when you hear the theme is the original recording on there. That's Don Schmidt on the drums and Ross Nikiforuk, who was kind of our unofficial 5th Pike guy. He was a hired gun as a keyboard player and multi-instrumentalist. He played on our Neptune album and also toured for a couple of years with us. And so Ross played the keys in there and did the accordion thing. and Brian played electric, and I played bass, acoustic, and did a second electric part in the song. So, and yeah, that's the theme song there. And so when you hear that, that's what it was never redone. Although when the show went to series, I ended up sort of beefing up the harmony vocals, and I can't remember the names now, unfortunately, of the guys that came in. There were two great singers and came in and sort of re-sang harmonies that I had overdubbed myself. Like I sang my vocal and did the original harmonies on there. And then also when we went to do the soundtrack album, there's a great fiddler by the name of Ashley McIsaac, and maybe you guys know him over there. I'm not sure if you do, but very well known in Canada. And he ended up playing fiddle on there. And in fact, he played fiddle on the episode, which was the 4th episode of Due South, They Eat Horses, Don't They? Which featured great Canadian actor Al Waxman. And Ashley, a very eccentric and amazing musician, and he's a lefty. He plays the fiddle left-handed, and he's from Nova Scotia. And it was just good fortune. He was traveling through, touring across Canada, and I happened to be in Saskatoon, and the agent said, Ashley's coming through. It'd be great if he could play some fiddle on this particular version of the song, because we knew it was going to go to a soundtrack album. So he came in and laid down a bunch of tracks the morning he got in, and it's on there. So, and I really love the fiddle in there. I think it's really quite great. So yeah, there's been through a bunch of different mutations over the years, the theme song, but it's one of those things where it seems to have lasted fairly well. And I can remember at the time when the show was first airing, I remember Paul Haggis, who I greatly respect as in so many ways. He's just an amazing individual in many ways, and I learned so much from him. And he was tough, but he was fair, and he really, I really feel like he kind of in some ways took me under his wing. He saw some potential in my music composing ability and gave me a chance to work on that. And the music stands up really well, I think, over time. I think it does. But anyway, at one point he said that he thought that was the best theme song on TV, at least back at that time, and that we all took that as a compliment. That was a really kind of a cool thing to hear that from him, because he really knows music. And I mean, he's really just really got an amazing vision for things and an amazing memory. I remember he never forgot anything, because if you forgot something, and there was a lot of music in Due South, sometimes you would have you'd have 40 pieces of music in an episode, and some of them are just little blips that are 5 seconds, 3 seconds long, and others are a minute long, and there was generally always a song or two in every episode as well. So it was heavy amount of music in the show. So he would remember it. It was like, gee, didn't I wanted you to do this here, or and we even with all our notes that we would be taking, we occasionally would forget something. He would remember that and remind us of it. And so, yeah, very brilliant individual. Feel very blessed to have been able to learn from him and work with him over the years. And we stayed in touch a little bit over the years, not for a little bit, but yeah, it was a few years ago. I think we were in touch. And anyway, cool guy. Feel very blessed to be able to have worked with him.
I mean, one thing which I've always wondered, because both the original bits of score and bits of music for Due South, as well as the song choices additionally, are always not only fantastic, but so well blended to suit the episode. Were you involved in picking out the piece of music to go around your original compositions?
No, there was a music supervisor that did that. And for a large portion of the shows, it was Karen Medic, who I have stayed in touch with a little bit over the years. We've stayed in touch over social media and stuff. And I don't know if she's involved in that now, but she chose a lot of the music. And well, I must say, the very first season, Paul Haggis, he was directly responsible for choosing the music. That was the first 22 episodes, and then the next 18, Jeff King was a producer, and I know he was involved in that, as well as Karen. And then for the last 26, Karen was the person sort of choosing the music. But it was interesting, because Paul Haggis had a real knack for finding just the right songs to fit with the right in the right places. And there were a number of Sarah McLachlan songs, and also Lorena McKennett, both great female singer-songwriters that just have a real distinct quality to their music. And one thing that was really neat that I learned, that, and I guess partly from Jack and John and partly from Paul, but really a lot from the two guys that we, my compadres, musical compadres, we were. You were really, the direction of the music for an episode was often dictated by what might be a feature song. And like as a for instance, there's an episode called "We're the Eggmen." We're the Eggmen. And so we do a little subtle acknowledgement of the Beatles song that features that, which is I'm the Walrus. I'm the Walrus.
Yeah.
Really, all it is, we just use that kind of guitar sound in a couple little spots there, and it really was not completely. It's more perhaps subliminally recognizable as referring to that a little bit, but it's and there was like another one that featured what was the band? The song was Aqua Tuta. I remember it was Aqua Tuta. It was sung in Inuit, and it had this kind of minor, low kind of E minor thing. And I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. Let's kind of, you found yourself kind of in some ways referencing back to those pieces of music a little bit, in various ways. And maybe they were ways quite often that maybe us as the composers would only really notice very much. But I think sometimes people would, but there was a lot of care done in the music. There was a lot of detail and there was a lot of work. And I tell you, I don't think I've ever worked in anything as hard. I mean, finishing albums sometimes that can be you stay up for a few days and you're really burning it to make sure you've got the correct things recorded and that the mix is happening and everything else. But with Due South, generally, when we were finishing an episode, we would push it right to the last minute and literally stay up all night. And then I was usually the person that would deliver the music to where they were doing the final audio mix, which was Deluxe Toronto. There's a series of Deluxe around the world, I think, and it was Deluxe Toronto. And it was interesting to see how technology developed over time, because the first season we delivered, first of all, they were mixing it all on analog tape, 224 track. Alan Ormrod, Al, who's a buddy, became a great friend of mine in Toronto, and now he's living outside of Toronto. And but anyway, he was the mixer. He was the head of mixing the entire audio for the show, for all of the episodes. And so it was interesting to see it develop with Al along the way. But there were two MCI 2-inch tape machines, analog tape. That was where all the tracks were done. And then they mixed it down to, I think, 1/4-inch analog tape, which is old school kind of, making records kind of thing. The next season switched over to Tascam DA88 multi-tracks, and they were a series of small multi-track tapes that were about almost the size of an audio cassette, and a bunch of these machines running in tandem, and they were much quicker and recording wise a little more accurate. But and then the third, by the end, by when we took the year off and then we came back for the last 26 episodes, everything was digital by then. It was all done Pro Tools. So it was all being mixed in the digital domain by then, which made it much easier to drop in the music cues because you could line it up. There wasn't as much trial and error to sort of, try and get it in the exact spot, even though you would have the numbers, the SMPTE time code numbers. And by that, I mean, when you're working on an episode, you're seeing the picture, but along the bottom, you've got it, what's a burn-in, a time code. And it's really, to be general about it, it's about 1/30th. Each frame, there's a frame that goes by. Each frame is roughly 1/30th of a second, if I'm saying that correctly. Anyway, it's very accurate, and so you can line this stuff up really accurate. When it's in the digital domain, bing, you can get it dead on. Before that, you could have a little bit of movement with that along the way, but it's basically I would go there at 7 o'clock in the morning or 6:30 in the morning after staying up all night and sit with whoever was. Often it was Stephen Barden, who's still working in films and has been an amazing award-winning film guy over the years. There was Jill. Yeah, it was Jill and Stephen. Anyway, we'd load in the music, and then Al would start mixing and he would have a couple of assistants there as well. And it was a 2-day mix. So generally he would mix, and then we go, us as the composers, or at least some of us, and I was at most of the final mixes. We would be in there when it came to final playback, because you'd want to, if they were, and that's when the producers would come in. So, the first season it was Paul Haggis, and second season it was Jeff King, and then the last 26, Paul Gross was the head producer. So, and they would basically be listening to the mix, and you had to be available in case something needed to change with the music or needed to be adapted or something like that. Anyway, I'm just rambling on and on and on, but it's fun to go back and remember that whole process. But we worked hard. It was hard work, but it was well worth it. And it was such a satisfying feeling when you saw it air live on television, It was, but the thing that was really, that really happened is you would spend often many hours working on a piece of music for a particular scene. And then you'd watch it on TV, and it would just kind of zip on by, like it seemed like I was like, wow. We spent like half a day on that, and it just zipped by in about 90 seconds, and which is the way it is. It's just the way it is for television and film and that kind of thing. But it was very satisfying to actually see the episodes when you could. Often we couldn't. We'd be working, when they would actually air, like we'd be working on the next episode when the other one that we had just worked on would air. But it was neat to see it on TV, and you really got an interesting picture and an interesting audio vibe of what it sounded like, because it is different hearing things back in a recording studio and hearing them over the air. It's a process you never stop learning, and I still have so much to learn. And I got really spoiled on Due South because literally everybody that I worked with on that show were the cream of the crop in Canada. They were literally the best. The people that worked on that show were the best in their fields. And, and I've worked on many other TV series and things since then. And it set a bar very high. There was a very high bar set on Due South, and very much a groundbreaking show, because it was a show completely produced in Canada that was a primetime network TV show in the U.S. airing on CBS. So that was kind of a pretty big deal at the time. It was neat. It was neat to be able to know that. And you know what? One of the most interesting things is the friends I've met over the years. Like yourself. To be able to talk with you in the UK, and John, who's now living in Australia, and people literally around the world are aware of that show. And there's just a really universal love for that show. And at the conventions, I've met so many amazing people from every corner of planet Earth, and it's really gratifying and very touching to be able to know that something I was involved in has had a big impact on people. It's cool.
Oh, it's amazing. We'll just share a few of the comments from the floor here. So Jason Voorhees, as he's going under, says, hey, we've got Tree Frog Writer, just the person I was hoping to do. She clarified she meant catch there. And I love Jay Semko interviews. This is from Stephanie Bennett. He's such a great storyteller, and lots of people echoing that sentiment. So thank you for these wonderful stories, Jay. One which I have to make sure I ask. There's a few other questions hopefully we'll get to, but I will get lynched by people if I don't at least ask you about this. Is there any chance you'll get involved with the much mooted reboot of Due South?
Wow. I didn't know there is a reboot. Is that a confirmed thing?
Well, all I can say is when I interviewed Paul Gross about a year ago, he said that they were kicking around ideas, him and David Marciano has said today that he was saying it, that it's going to be hopefully coming 22-23.
Wow. Well, I would love to work on it. I haven't, this is the first I've actually heard that there would be a potential. I mean, people talk about that all the time, but if you're hearing it from David Marciano, then it may be a real thing. And that would be, I would love to work on it. I would hope that I would be able to do that and they would want me back to work on it. That would be cool.
I think it wouldn't be the same without you, sir. I mean, I've actually, on YouTube, they've now put up the episodes, but for rights reasons, they've stripped the music away. And man, it's, episodes still stand up, but it is like something's very sorely missing without that amazing music that you put on there. And again, as I say, the chosen musical choices as well as the new ones just blend so well into the episode. When it's missing, it's like part of the dialogue's gone.
I'm sorry.
I
missed the last thing you said. Sorry.
Just like when you don't have the music there, it is like a part of the dialogue's missing. The music is so integral, I believe, to Due South.
Well, that's the interesting thing, you know, when you see the show, when we would spot the episodes, occasionally the editor would drop in a piece of music, especially later shows. They would drop in music cues that already existed from previous shows, you know, saying, you know, and often because they would like to edit to it. And but when we were seeing it, you're seeing it without any music and really without any of the other sounds involved as well. So, you know, and that's a big part of it too. If there's a car crash, you want to hear the sound, or if there's a gunshot, you want to hear the sound of the gun or whatever it might possibly be. And the music, and yes, it's any show you work on without music, boy, you go, yeah, this needs music. There's some shows that really don't lend themselves as much to music that I've worked on over the years, but most of them do benefit from having interesting music involved. You know, it's just one of those things where there's it just adds a whole other connection to things. And me being a music person, I mean, I really recognize when I'm really impacted by music in shows, when I recognize music scores that I really love, and when I hear songs that are used really well in a TV show or in a movie, it really leaves a big impact. But I mean, if you just think of some of the you know, impactful movies of, you know, since movies began, you know, in Jaws, dun 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 dun. It's two notes, dun 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 dun. It's huge. I mean, that's a huge part of that particular movie. I mean, John Williams, just a great film composer. I mean, just so many brilliant ideas over the years. And with Due South, I guess there's certain signature lines that always work really well with that. So, boy, that would be neat. That'd be interesting. I was thinking about that. I was thinking, if they did a Due South reboot, because obviously time has passed. That's the last episodes were done in 1998. So that's been, it's literally 23 years ago, I guess now. So, and I've seen Paul Gross in a few things since then. I guess I've crossed paths with him a couple times, but we haven't really kept in major touch over the years, although we've written some music together over time. And he and David Keeley were the Gross Keeley band, and they did a few records that were really quite good. I mean, Paul's a talented guy. Paul Gross can write songs and sing, and he's you know, obviously a great writer and a great actor. I mean, it's sort of he's a definitely a super talented individual. There's no doubt about it.
A lot of love there just from John Wright again. Thank you, Jay. Always love listening to your stories and insight. Love you, buddy. I think that's echoed by
Oh, isn't that
everyone
nice? Well, love
watching.
you too, John. Love you too, buddy.
I just want to kind of round it up by maybe well, something which John actually asked. One of his questions was if there's any music that you would want to reinterpret or redo from any TV show from past or present, which show would it be and why? And maybe just add to that, if we've got enough time, if you were to redo to go back to Due South now, what would you like to add?
Boy, if I went back to Due South now, or if there was a reboot of Due South, I would still consider the acoustic guitar to be kind of a main instrument, because I think that really was part of the character of Benton Fraser. I really do love, some of the, I guess I call them Arctic sounds, but I guess they're, the flute, the low drum. A lot of the elements would still work really well. But one thing we started using a little more in later episodes was a little more piano. And I kind of like the piano. The piano had a real kind of, and Jack is a great piano player. And I mean, it's just really, he's just a real monster on the keyboard. So melding that, and I guess what the way we kind of looked at it was the piano had a bit of a Chicago element to it. You can get kind of bluesy with it. And when I think Chicago, I think Chess Records, and I think of that, a lot of that kind of vibe going on there. So, I think we would probably use a little more piano, and who knows? I mean, it would be wonderful to have a budget to be able to use, a string section in certain parts and things like that, to be able to do that. At the same time, part of the charm of Due South was that it was often very stripped down. Some music cues were just an acoustic guitar or just a piano or just very, very minimalist, as opposed to filling in all the holes. That's in some ways one of the most important things is not filling in too much at the wrong spot, because you can really clog things up. And having a really pure guitar sound. Interestingly, with Due South, I used a Martin D28 guitar on the pilot movie. And then for the first 2 episodes, when the show first began, I used a Yamaha acoustic, and I missed the sound of the big ringing Martin, the big dreadnought Martin acoustic guitar. So, and I didn't have one. I just rented one for the pilot episode, and I was using Yamaha for the first 2 episodes, and then the 3rd episode of Due South, which was, I believe, Manhunt. I think that's what it was, with Leslie Nielsen. That's where he first appears. And pardon me if I've got the name of the episode wrong, but I used the first episode with Leslie Nielsen, and it was so good to have the D28, that D28, because it just has that ringing, and those episodes, the first season, we mixed it at a place called Digital Studios with Mike Jones, the late Mike Jones. And I was sad when I heard he passed away. That was a few years ago. But Mike was a great engineer. Worked with tons of great people over the years. People like the Rolling Stones, and he was from England. He had worked as an assistant at Olympic Studios back in the '60s and the early '70s. A really cool guy, and learned a ton from him. And he mixed some music that I did on my own, some of my solo stuff, and. But anyway, he was really very particular about his acoustic guitar sounds, and that carried on to when we got past working with Mike for subsequent seasons along the way. So you just learn, it's just a fascinating. Music is so fascinating to me, and you'll never conquer it. You'll never completely, go beyond. There's always something new to learn, and that's going to be the way it is. For as long as I'm lucky enough to be around here on Earth,
Jay, thank you so much. I'd love it if you could spare some time to come back again someday.
I would love to. It's been great talking to you. Thank you.
If you could just do me a favor, just for the intro to the Due South podcast, we do Due South by Southeast. Could you just say, this is Jay Semko, and you're listening to Due South by Southeast?
You bet. This is Jay Semko, and you are listening to Due South by Southeast.
Jay, thank you. This has been amazing. And I just want to thank you because people have been donating at dogthesquee.com for Phoenix Dogs Rehoming. And I get to ring the donation bell once again because we're up to £596.
Whoa. Excellent. Excellent.
Thank you, sir. I know a lot of people stayed up just to watch this in the UK as well as watching around the world. So
thank you for having me here. Thanks everybody for hanging out here, you know, and best of luck. It sounds like things are going swimmingly and really successfully right now.
Thank you, Jay. You take care and I'll speak to you soon.
Okay, thanks. Take care.
Thank you for your time.